Hey, what's up, nerds? Time for another Mastering the Free People. This time we're talking about our battalion, the only one we have left, the Freeguild Regiment. So, what does this thing require? Uh, Basically one of everything. Um, One of either a general or a general on Griffin, a unit of great swords, a unit of demigryphs, unit of outriders, unit of pistoliers, 3 units of Freeguild Guard, and 3 units chosen from archers, handgunners, and crossbowmen for our minimum size, taking, just minimum one of everything, and just a regular old general, not the general on a griffin, comes out to 410 points. I'm sorry, 1,410 points. So this thing is big. This is going to take up most of your list. So, what does it do for us? Units that are within 6 inches of another unit from the battalion are +1 to hit. Units in the battalion auto pass battle shock on 1s, and a lot of our banners already give us auto pass battle shock on 1s, so any of those units also pass battle shock on 2s. So we're very resistant to battle shock with this. If we use a general on Warhorse with his stately war banner, we can roll battle shock on 2d6 and take the lowest for all units within 24 inches of him. That is most of the board. Our battle trait allows us to re-roll battle shock tests, and most of our units are going to be auto passing on 1 or 2. So that maths out to auto passing battle shock about 80% of the time for those units that auto pass on 1s and 2s. And auto passing around 50-ish% of the time for the rest. That is pretty strong. That leaves us basically better off than the dwarves' ability. Stacking buffs. We get a lot of +1s to hit in this army. So our Freeguild Guard and handgunners have the ability to get +1 to hit just for their unit size. Hold the line from our Freeguild General gives us +1 to hit and wound. The General on Griffin also gives out a +1 to hit for his command ability. Hold the line affects 3 units, but the General on Griffin's only affects 1. This battalion gives out another +1 to hit. So the moral of the story is most of your army is hitting on 2s all the time. So that's really powerful. Our great companies are really powerful, and this battalion really synergizes well into that. Like, you're already taking the components of what you would be putting in a great company in this battalion. Like, it's forcing you into those selections already anyway. A great company requires a unit of Freeguild Guard. We're required to take 3. With all of the stuff that we have in here, we can easily run 2 great companies. We just have to take 2 units of guard with 20+ models. Easy enough. The supporting charge and shooting that comes along with the great companies is that same 6 inches from another unit that our +1 to hit buff is. So that synergizes well, that everything is going to be close together. We're getting extra bonuses for staying close together. So those two things work nicely with each other. And the nice little thing about this is that the buff from the battalion allows smaller groups of handgunners to be effective. Usually I take my groups of handgunners in groups of 20 or 30 because they get that +1 to hit for having 20 or more models. Now, they also get a +1 to hit for not moving. They get they get +1 to hit from the battalion, they get +1 to hit and wound from hold the line. So all of those things together, if you add it all up, they don't actually need that extra size buff if they are getting hold the line and they're not moving and they're within 6 inches of another unit from the battalion in order to be hitting on 2s. So that's definitely a nice little thing that kind of makes this a little less cumbersome to work with. And smaller units, sometimes it feels kind of wasteful to have a big unit of 20 handgunners, because then it could just completely blow something off the table with like total overkill, and it might just be kind of a waste of points. And if you're running a unit of 20, all it takes is 1 damage to get through to knock that buff off. So it's nice to not have to rely on that. So artifacts and traits that go well with this. Indomitable is probably, I think, the #1 command trait. It gives +1 to save for all units within 6 inches of your general that didn't charge that turn. And that puts your Freeguild guard with sword and shield on 3 up to hit, re-rolling 1s. So that is incredibly powerful. The other thing to note here is that this specifically says on your turn. So as soon as the turn flips over to your opponent's turn, this activates. So you can charge in, take a few extra losses in that first turn, but then when the unit survives and goes to the next round of combat, they get +1 to their save roll, so they're going to be a little bit more resilient. Flag of the Conquerors is a great artifact. If you're using multiple great companies, it lets you re-roll your counter charges within 12 inches of the bearer of the banner. That is really strong. Armor of Meteoric Iron, another +1 to the save of your hero. It's important to note here that both the Freeguild General and the Freeguild General on Griffin can already end up having a natural 3-up save. So Indomitable, that's going to give your general +1 to his save as well, as long as he's not charging. And the Armor of Meteoric Iron is giving +1 to save of, presumably, probably not the unit that is also getting the Indomitable trait, because that would just be redundant. So your heroes are very often going to be on 2-up saves, like all the time, which is fantastic because we are kind of short on heroes in this army. We really need to dip into our allies a lot to get decent heroes to shore up what we've got. So these buffs to the save on our heroes are extremely valuable. And a Freeguild general on a Griffin with the Armor of Meteoric Iron at 260 points seems crazy. It just feels like it's going to be really good. I haven't tested it yet, but that just seems like it's going to be absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait for that. So some pros and cons to this. Like, obviously, this whole thing is very powerful. Like, your infantry are basically all going to be hitting on 1s all the time. I'm sorry, on 2s, rather. Your shooters are pretty much all going to be hitting on 2s most of the time. And you can very easily have a very low drop count list. Theoretically, you could just do a 1-drop list with this. You would only have 1 hero, so that's kind of bad. So if you want to add in a couple of other heroes, you go to like a 3-drop list maybe and have everything substantially in your army in the battalion, which is really good. The downside, this thing is huge, so it really restricts your ability to pick and choose. what you want in your army, and it's forcing to use some kind of subpar units. I'm not really a huge fan of Pistoliers. Outriders, I've got sort of a tenuous relationship with. The other thing that I don't have listed here is that it's forcing you into certain selections in general. Your infantry selections, in combination with the great companies, it kind of leaves like one odd man out group. Personally, I think if I was going to be running this list, I would make that one odd man out a unit of archers and have them vanguard up at the beginning of the game and try and bait some charges or absorb some enemy fire, so we can get the rest of our units up the battlefield. This army is really slow now, so distracting your opponent is definitely going to be valuable. So that's about all I've got on this right now. I just wanted to kind of briefly go over kind of like the pros and cons and what's good about this. This is going to make for an extremely tough and resilient list. You're going to have lots and lots of dudes, and it's going to be pretty hard to kill them. I think Indomitable, in combination with your Freeguild Guard, is going to be absolutely crazy. It's going to make your halberdiers actually viable now, I think. They really, in the prior iteration of the General's Handbook, I didn't really think that they were that great because they just had that 5-up save re-rolling ones. And now with Indomitable, we can easily get them to a 4-up, and a Mystic Shield brings them to a 3-up. So there's a lot of potential to work there with what we've got. I think I'm probably going to be trying out some lists involving this battalion with 2 great companies within it, and probably like 2 heroes in addition to the one that's in the list. The sort of rough draft list that I've got going on would have, a general on a warhorse, a general on a griffin, and then the controversial choice from some feedback that I've gotten from people already is a warrior priest on a warhorse, who I think is a really solid hero to throw in for allies, because you can put him on a 3-up save, he can give himself a 6-up ward save with prayers, and he can pray away D3 wounds a turn. So he's potentially got a lot of staying power for holding objectives. And at 80 points, I think that's a pretty decent thing to slot in for those scenarios that are going to require heroes to capture objectives. Anyway, I'm just sort of babbling at this point. I'm digging it. I am probably going to use this battalion. I think it may have some limited viability just because it's so big, and it doesn't leave us a lot of options to run a great company and also bring in allies. So there's definitely some pros and cons here. I'm going to be trying it both ways, and I will definitely be reporting back to everybody. Until then, I will see you all later.